Good evening and welcome to the Pittsford Board of Education meeting. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Pete? Pete and Ted, thank you. Any edits? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. May I have an approval of the minutes from October 26th, please?
So moved.
Thanks, Irene. And I have Renee, second. Any edits? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Board of Education reports. We do have an update as of this afternoon, late breaking news with being shifted into a yellow zone. Just to let everybody know, any of the meetings that are scheduled for next week have now been moved to a Zoom format, and you should be receiving a link for that. So I know, Pete, there were supposed to be some attorneys coming in from Syracuse, and that will be Zoom now. Okay? Same with information exchange. We did have a legislative committee meeting that I'm going to have Val, if you don't mind reporting out on that.
Last Wednesday, we met with two of our local regents, Vice Chancellor Brown and Regent Norwood. It was the day after the election, so everybody was a little bit bleary-eyed, but yeah, I think we still had a pretty good meeting. We had come up with some questions. Our committee had come up with some questions to ask the regents in advance, and they were apprised of those questions. But in general, they gave some couple of general statements talking about revisiting graduation measures, and they would just want to look at what do students need and are we meeting those needs. They also talked about some funding changes that might be coming up due to a new administration, but regardless of what happens with that transition, the money will not be flowing very quickly, so we shouldn't be looking for any changes next spring. We're just not sure. They just don't know that those will come along quickly. They did happen to mention that they have built very strong relationships with the Department of Budget in New York, and that helps them to get some of those approvals through very quickly. And they also wanted to talk about not comparing our strategies to New York City strategies, and that we need to be very vocal. And I think you're going to talk about something like that a little bit later, Amy, but to be very vocal with our needs for West or Upstate New York, funding-wise. So some of the questions we asked them, one of them was about workforce availability issues and loosening the requirements possibly for substitutes. They talked about already amending some of the regulations to ease some of those challenges, and they're continuing to gather feedback from some people in the field. But they did state that they were open to considering anything that makes sense, but they want to make sure that they keep a high standard because they don't want to create a detriment to students by designing a frame for long-term subs who are uncertified teachers. So they want to keep that in mind. We talked about the vacancies at SED, and they're very proud of being able to develop some of these folks who end up moving on and going to other states. However, they're now going to make it a priority to look for and develop talent to fill those positions with people who will stay with the agency long term. And some of those vacancies they're going to leave open just for whoever the new commissioner is to be able to create their own team for themselves. We did talk about state and regents assessments and state assessments. And as you know, the January regents have been canceled. But they wanted to they're looking at making sure that they could administer them equitably and safely, and they were very strong to let us know that education, teaching, and learning are not on hold, despite the fact that we might not be having regents in January or what they're going to look like in the spring. But they also mentioned that districts might have a little more control over assessments coming up, assessment measures that they're going to be using in the spring. So we'll have to see how that plays out. We asked them about what they thought reimagining schools looks like to them, and they were very, very positive. They talked about focusing on thinking forward and asking themselves where do we want to be and making sure we don't always do things the way we've always done them just because that's just the way we've always done them. Very, very positive about trying to be creative during this time. And they also talked about their desire to have students develop these innate talents that they can take anywhere in the marketplace. But overall, they say that they would do whatever they could to support our districts during this time. And they also thanked the Board of Education members for their service during this time, and also for continuing to believe in public education. That was very important to them. So they wanted to make sure that we passed that along to our board members. And actually, I think, Amy, you had some other things you wanted to add too.
So as soon as they open that door to say that they're open to suggestions, I had a meeting with, or just an email exchange with Sherry Johnson, the director of Monroe County School Boards, as well as Gary Bracken, the vice president. And we determined if they've opened that door, then we're going to walk through it, and we're going to create some suggestions, both from a financial aspect and also from talking about assessments and talking about other things that maybe they should be looking at in their reimagining design. So more to come on that front. I do have a meeting this week. We'll be sitting down and talking about some of the potential suggestions that we could offer as an association, and then we'll be forwarding those suggestions to the membership for you to all take a look at it as well, and then hopefully forward that to Vice Chancellor Brown and Regent Norwood. So more to come definitely on that front. So thank you, Val. That was a great summary. So all the dates will remain on the Monroe County School Board Association meetings, other than the fact that we've been shifting to Zoom for now. Dates to remember, we have the 11th, the schools will be closed for Veterans Day, and the 23rd of November is our next regularly scheduled board meeting. Moving along to the financial report, Darren.
Is the speaker on?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you had this in your packet, so I'm mostly going to use the presentation part for some pictures, and without going through every single slide, hopefully. But the department maintains about 1.4 million square feet in 11 buildings, or 205 acres, 40 athletic fields, and we do this with 24 full-time equivalent staff. And that also includes that do security. The initial impacts of COVID, the contractors were not able for some time to get into the schools to do some things. We've found it very difficult to get some supplies and materials. That has changed once we got to summer. Contractors were available under certain circumstances to be able to come in and do things to help us work. But even contractors in capital projects, et cetera, while there's the labor force is there, they're having a hard time getting supplies and materials. In March, we reduced the custodial and buildings and ground staff to basically part-time or half-time. Did it on a rotational basis. Once we got into, say, May, we realized that if school were to open, it's going to be a mad push to do a lot of unusual things, so we started our typical summer work then, as far as, for example, waxing floors, stripping floors, cleaning, disinfecting. Come summer, everybody was back full-time. The concentration was on coming up with cleaning protocols. Most of the principals had us moving furniture around like crazy, sometimes 3 and 4 times, trying to get the spacing that's needed, as well as be able to operate the instructional programs. You can see in the picture here, our crews spent a lot of time putting together PPE. A lot of that time was spent just trying to find where to get it. We drove as far as Buffalo and Niagara Falls in order to get some of the supplies that we needed to get. Our crews designed some polycarbonate shields in the office spaces. and they distributed throughout the district. If you look at the conference room at the Buildings and Grounds, it's loaded to the hilt with disinfectant materials and gels and stuff, things of that nature. So to give you an idea of what some of the buildings look like, in the lower right is something we tried as far as in the nurses' offices in order to be able to enclose each one of the cot areas and contain. So we did over 857 work orders, and some work orders are huge, some are just one small thing or several small things. At the bottom here are the typical things that we tend to do over the summer, but we hit some highlights of things that we did, such as HVAC maintenance, athletic field irrigation, pavement repairs throughout the district. The small gym at Mendon High School was totally sanded down and refinished, as was Thornell Road and the Park Road Auditorium stage. We did a lot of electrical upgrades. Barker Road and Mendon High School pools were drained and regrouted, and you'll see the positive impacts of that in a few minutes. Unfortunately, we had a couple of water main and sewer breaks that we took care of, and in the process of doing that, we had to replace the sidewalks. So as you see here in this picture is Park Road. Pretty excited about the new swing sets at Mendon Center and Jefferson Road. They're a little bit lower so that the kids don't swing quite as high, and it's a safer situation, as well as the chain links are smaller. Did a lot of landscaping cleanup at several buildings. This is both from a cleanliness standpoint, maintenance standpoint, but more importantly from a security standpoint. Makes egress out of windows safer and less places for people to hide. The Mendon Center stair repairs, they came out really good. And then the last part of the capital project, the mini projects that we've been doing at the Transportation Department, the underground diesel tank was taken out and replaced with a 10,000 gallon above ground unleaded fuel tank. If you recall, when we switched over to the unleaded buses, we needed more capacity for fuel as we converted the buses over. Switching over the elevators or updating them in several of the buildings, that's proven to be quite the chore. And then paving work throughout the district, basically replacing manhole covers and various other things. So from a security standpoint, we continue to be putting in what we call the panic buttons throughout in the offices. We also have updated our 234 security cameras and our recording devices, and our large-scale emergency drill that we normally do in the spring was obviously postponed due to COVID. So that's kind of the real quick high level. If you have any questions.
I have a quick curiosity question. Why is it an above-ground tank? Do you no longer do the in-ground ones?
The below-ground tanks, if they develop a leak, you don't know it unless it's pretty substantial, and the above-ground tanks are easier to maintain. Okay. So Jeff also gave you some information on the utilities. You also heard about that in some of the information that I gave you for the board's article. The past year, the heating and degree days and the cooling degree days were less, as well as our unit prices were lower, but obviously in the spring we used a lot less utilities. So the round figure, the quick way to look at it is we had about 9% less consumption, about 25% less cost, and our utilities were about $365,000 less than they were the year before. So if you want me to go in more detail, I can, but I think that pretty well hits it. What's that?
Darren, I just want to say thank you to you and to the department for the amazing work, the behind-the-scenes work that so many people do not see. Everything as subtle as when we want to work with PTSA to do something fun for kids, and then we realize that it's going to require a lot of additional supervision or pickup or cleanup, like the pumpkin lighting, for example. They're the first to show up. When we want to do something with Rotary, they're the first to show up and help with parking, and in addition to all of this other stuff. And this year in particular, the work done in preparation for having our schools ready in a safe way, in addition to their jobs, has been outstanding. So I just want to thank you publicly and thank the folks in the Maintenance and Security Department for all they do.
Thank you. You have a dedicated staff.
Thanks so much, Darren. Human Resource Report, Mike.
So, first for your consideration is the professional staff report, and it has a couple hires. One of those hires is the person who will be replacing me.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
If I could just clarify I'm sorry, Mike, if I could just clarify one thing, that person will be Sean Clark, who is the principal at Jeff Road Elementary School, who has shown extraordinary leadership in so many different ways. So we're excited to onboard him and thankful for Mike for staying on for a period of time through February something to assist with the transition. So, Mike, thank you for agreeing to stay on, and congratulations to Sean Clark. The other thing I just want to mention publicly is that we had 3 outstanding finalists, all very deserving of it, and it was the work of so many different committees that brought 3, again, outstanding finalists for my consideration. And so I want to also congratulate not only Sean, but the other 2 candidates as well.
And second for your consideration is the support staff report, and we have a few hires to fill positions that were open.
May I have a motion, please? Thanks, Val. Thanks, Renee. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Curriculum report, Melanie.
Glad to be here tonight to share with you the secondary assessment data report. This is an annual report. And before I dive into it, I want to give tremendous thanks to Dr. Kimmer and his team for actually pulling together all of the data and the charts that you see here. They really do the work, and I just get to be the one standing up here and talking about it. So I really appreciate the work that Jeff and his team do on this year after year. I will also say, good news item, this report will be substantially shorter than in previous years because we have no Regents exams to report on since they were all canceled last year. So I won't be able to provide you with our good news on our Regents exams since there were none this year. But given that, we'll dive right in. So the three assessments that we will look at are the results of our AP exams, our ACT exams, and our SAT exams. Excuse me. The AP exams this year, thank you. While you look at the data, and I know in your packets there's pretty extensive data around the AP exams this year, and to an outside observer you might think that nothing was different this year in terms of those exams, but in actual fact the AP exams were significantly different this year due to closure. So right after we went into closure on March 20th, we were notified by the College Board that the AP exams would be substantially changed to allow students to take the exam remotely from home. They were reduced in time from a 2.5 to 3 hour exam to approximately 45 minutes to an hour. And most of the exams, no matter which the course was, which exam it was, consisted of 1 or 2 open-ended questions. Students were timed. It was a very strict protocol that they had to follow. It was quite a bit of work actually on the part of our technicians team because kids had to have particular browser uploaded to be able to follow all the rules and regulations. And then kids did the testing at home and timed, and they had to submit at a particular time. So it was a very, very different experience. The College Board did also, in addition to significantly changing the format of the exam, they reduced the amount of material on each exam down to what would typically be covered by early March for a AP teacher following the recommended AP syllabus. So they came out and they said, these units will be tested, these units will not be tested. So they really did a nice job in that way of guiding our teachers to know how to prepare their students. Our AP teachers worked extraordinarily hard and diligently with kids in that emergency remote environment to keep kids moving forward with the AP content and the skills, and really did, as the data shows, a great job preparing them for a very different kind of testing experience than they'd ever had before. So with that, we'll look a little bit at some of the results of the actual assessments themselves. You can see, again, we had 29 different assessments, over 2,000 exams written, and 86% of the exams were scored at a 3 or above. 3 is typically that benchmark on an AP where kids can have a fairly good chance of receiving some kind of college credit for having taken an exam that they scored a 3 or above. So this shows you over the past 3 years just the number of candidates, the number of exams written, and then the number scoring at a 3 or above on those exams. And they're fairly steady. The percent of students scoring at a 3 or above, or the percent of exams with a score of 3 or above. Again, a slight downtick this year, although I think that that's a trend that you'll still see. We look very, very favorable compared to the state, the nation, and in fact the world. These are global exams, and so we're able to compare ourselves in a very broad way with students around the world. This chart has a lot of information, and for those of you who are trying to view this from home, my apologies for that. I always like to take a minute to call the board's attention to a couple of specific and particular pieces of data that are shown in this chart. So I want to start this year by calling your attention to the Computer Science A exam results. This was the first year of our Computer Science A AP course last year. And so you see we had 33 students sit for the exam, and we had a mean score of 3.3 with 76% of the kids scoring a 3 or above. That was a brand new course for us, which means that the teachers who taught the course, this was their first year teaching it. They had gone through training last summer to prepare, and so I'm really, really pleased to see those results. Right under the CompSci A exam, you see CompSci Computer Principles. That's the course that is not, we don't run that as an AP course. It's a Project Lead the Way course. It's taught by a technology teacher sometimes, by a math teacher sometimes, just depending on staffing and how it works throughout the year. Students are not required to take the AP exam at the end of the course. It's optional for them to do so. In order to qualify to take the AP exam, they have to do additional work and submit a portfolio. So I would just like to kind of celebrate the fact that year over year for the last 3 years, we've seen a significant increase in the number of students taking that course who elect to take the exam. It is additional work, and it's exciting to see kids really wanting to dive in and challenge themselves in that way. Other courses to call your attention to, the World History exam. That is the first AP experience that our students typically have. It's the majority of students who take that course take it in 10th grade as an alternate to Global History 10. And you can see that 94% of those kids scored a 3 or above, and it's a total of 233 kids who take the exam. So it's a really good pool. Other very popular AP courses: biology, psychology, chemistry, English language arts, all see very, very strong success rates on those exams year after year. And then here again you see our results compared with New York State and worldwide on a 3-year kind of trend. And then this is just that same comparison, local, state, and global by each particular exam. Okay. Moving on to the ACT exam. Again, our students do very, very well here. We had a slight dip in the number of students electing to take the ACT this year. We were down About 21 students from last year, but overall down close to 100 if you look at our numbers from 2 years ago. Again, due to COVID, the spring administrations, April, June, and then even July AC tests were canceled this year, and so that may explain a little bit the lower numbers. The ACT test is the one that's really designed to measure essentially just academic achievement in English, math, reading, and science, basically answering the question, what have you learned while you've been in school? Here you see the 3-year trend data for our ACT results, comparing our results with New York State in all 4 subtests and then the composite. And you'll see we took a nice little tick up in most of the subtests this year, as did many of the students across the state. This gives you our again, just a different look at the this past year's comparisons of our students in blue to New York State and nationally on the 4 subtests. The highest possible score on an ACT test is a 36. Just so you get a little bit of a sense of what those 27.1s and 27.5 mean. Here again, you're looking at the comparisons national, state, and local. And then we start to look at the breakdown by range of scores. Each of the 4 subtests on the ACT has a designated benchmark score. You see that at the in the heading box of each of the subtests. So you see a benchmark of 18 for English, for example. That benchmark score indicates readiness for a college course. And so what the ACT folks tell us is that if a student achieves a benchmark score on a subtest, they have a 50% likelihood of receiving a B or higher in a comparable college course. So if you get an 18 or higher on the English ACT subtest, you're likely to get a B in your freshman English course in college. So that's a pretty important marker. I do not know why the benchmark is different on the different subtests. It has remained steady every year that I've been giving this report, but it looks a little bit different for the various subtests. But you can see that our kids are scoring very, very well as you look at the breakdown of the score ranges. And then when we put those score ranges on pie charts, it's a little bit easier even to see our performance. So I kind of look at these pie charts by saying anything in the pink-red hue, that's kind of what we're going for, because those are your high, average, high, and very high scores. And so the bigger the pink and the pinkish parts of the pie, the stronger our scores are on this particular subtest. So that was English. This is reading. 73% of our kids scoring in the high, average, high, or very high range in reading. 85% of our students scoring that well in math on the ACT. And 75% in science. And then finally, the SAT. This is the 4th year of the redesigned SAT. We're going to stop giving you that number pretty soon because it's going to become irrelevant. It's just the SAT. Also designed to assess academic readiness for college, used throughout the United States. The redesigned SAT is composed of an evidence-based reading and writing test and a math test. This year we had only 184 students take the SAT, which is down significantly from previous years. It's down by 259 students from last year. Again, it's a combination, I believe, of the fact that all the spring administrations of the SAT were canceled, and then furthermore, many of the colleges and universities that our kids choose to attend or apply to attend have waived any standardized testing for this year. So if you were planning to take the test, it got canceled, wherever you want to go is saying you don't need to submit an SAT, they didn't look to kind of re-up for it. So a significantly lower number. And we don't know going forward if colleges will reinstate the requirement or if they will have adjusted their metrics for admission going forward. Oops, sorry about that. So again, recognizing it's a smaller pool who took the test this year, our kids still performed very, very well on the SAT. Jeff always gives us a choice of graphs, so we did the bar graphs to look at our trends for the reading and writing, and then the line graphs for math. Anyway, you look at it, our kids significantly outperform students across the state and across the nation. And with that, are there any questions on any of those assessments?
I have a quick question. Besides that computer science principles class, are all the other classes required to take the AP tests?
No, our honors physics course is not run as an AP physics course, but it does prepare kids to take the AP if they choose to. I think that's probably the only other one that's like that, though. Yeah. And you see some AP exam reports for courses we don't teach. So you see, I think we had 6 kids last year who took AP German. We don't teach that, but they studied independently, or they're native speakers or whatever, they qualify to take the test. We still have a partnership with the Chinese School of Rochester, so kids who study Chinese there then qualify to take the AP exam, and so we administer it. They're our students. We get their score reports. Yeah.
Anyone else? Melanie, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank
and
you.
Dr. Kimmer, thank you so much. All the data, wherever he is. Okay, special education report. Elizabeth.
All items are on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Superintendent's report. Mike.
There is a need for an executive session this evening to have a discussion regarding current litigation.
May I have a motion, please? Thanks, Pete.
Second.
Thanks, Ted. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Also on the agenda, first reading for 5 amended policies. These are related to Title IX, and they are due to additional mandates that are required of schools across the state. Before I go into some of the information regarding yellow zones, I'd first like to thank our veterans for their service and their sacrifice in advance of Veterans Day. So on behalf of myself and the school district, we thank all of our veterans for all they've done. So today was a day. We received word around 11 this morning that we may be considered as a district in the yellow zone. So I just want to share some of the information that I feel comfortable relaying to the community through Zoom meetings with the Monroe County Executive Director, Adam Bello, and our Commissioner, Dr. Mendoza, as follows. So the first thing I would share is that this evening when we all met with Dr. Mendoza, he said that if he could double the square footage and double staff across our schools, he would bring everyone back because schools are a sanctuary. Again, he referenced us being a gold standard in managing the spread of COVID. Continue to share that at this point there's no evidence of any spread in any of our schools, but the virus is spreading from groups of people having private gatherings. He expressed his concern that the age group between 18 and the 20s is of the biggest concern, and that Halloween seemed to be the biggest trigger for putting us where we are right now. And he gave the example of families, kids having Halloween parties, let's say on a Friday or Saturday night, and some people were infected and asymptomatic at the time and spread it during the party, and then the next day was Sunday, and several students may come together and watch, let's just say, the Buffalo Bills game, and there's 10 or 12 students in that gathering, and the compound impact it had on our rates. And all of that was found out through the contact tracing. So as the tracers began their work, they started with people that were at a Halloween party and thought that maybe that was it, and then they realized that the next day was more than the party that they went to, that they impacted other people the 1, 2, 3, 4 days after that. And that's why we're seeing the highest numbers that we've seen since the beginning. So just want to talk a little bit about what that means for us at this point. And actually some of the areas that we believe the governor will come out with as far as being yellow zone areas. So we believe it to be the city of Rochester, Pittsford, Greece, Penfield, Webster, East Rochester, Henrietta, Chi-Lai, Gates, Perrington, Irondequoit, and Brighton. For us, the biggest thing is that we must complete 20% testing of our students and our staff per week. The testing is the rapid nose swab test. It is not the more pervasive deep nasal test, the one that goes really high. So the testing and the rapid nose test is just about an inch, or right around a little bit less, and can even be completed by a person within the 20%. So a student, for example, could perform that test on him or herself if they wanted to. We have a lot of questions, still more questions than answers regarding what this means. We do understand at this point that testing kits will be sent from New York State to our local county health department, and then there will be arrangements for schools to pick up. So for us, 20% of our entire staff and our in-person students, so this is only for those that are K-5 in-person and 6-12 hybrid, and our staff that are in our buildings. So 20%, when we look at those numbers, equates to about 1,200 tests per week that we would be conducting. So we're in the yellow zone right now, and we do not know when the testing will start. We believe it to be at some point early next week is our best guess. We do not have confirmation of that yet. And I do know that there's a lot of concern in the community about testing, and just want you to know that we're going to do everything that we can to work with you throughout that testing process. So we're in the yellow zone right now. Our biggest concern is that we move to the orange zone, which is the one next to us. And then the worst case scenario is moving to the red zone. The best case scenario is that we have a 2-week period of time where our numbers go down, and then we can exit from yellow to back to where we were, which have no restrictions. But right now we're in yellow, and in the event our numbers go up enough, that means that we would be forced to shut down. Schools would have to go fully remote if we move to the orange, and then they would stay fully remote if we go to red. So I guess another way to think about it, and this is pretty sad to say, if we don't control this now, then we are at the point where we were basically in March when we shut down. So everyone would be remote. And then depending if our community is orange or red, that would indicate and dictate to businesses who stays open and who has to close. So again, we're in yellow now. Orange has a little bit more restrictions, but we're shut down. And then red has the most implication to the community as well. Some random things. We do have sectionals in sports starting tomorrow. They are allowed to continue as they have been all year. So there is no change to the visitors, 2 visitors per student athlete. And until we hear differently, and hopefully it will stay true, sectional sports will continue. A few other things that were shared on our meetings today is how what a critical point, and this is from Adam Bello talking about the critical point that we're at right now, and both Dr. Mendoza and the county executive sharing that we all want our students to come back to school full time, but we don't want to go backwards, and that if our numbers do not improve within the next 2 weeks, it is possible that we could go from a yellow to an orange zone, forcing us to go fully remote. But that's in our community's control 100%. So we need to avoid the continuance of large gatherings. We need to adhere to wearing our masks and social distancing so that we can stay in school. So just to shift topics a little bit, I've also had a few emails from parents regarding, and staff actually, regarding our process for switching learning models at the end of January. So the first thing I guess I would have to offer is that we're about 11 weeks, almost 3 months away from that period of time. And as I think about where we're at right now, how quickly things can change. And so had we come out with a plan last week and then this happened, what impact would it have on people's perceptions of what model works best for them? So we're working through that process right now, and we have identified quite a few obstacles right now that we're trying to process through. One obstacle is that our transportation right now is at full capacity. And if you recall, part of the regulations and guidance around transportation is that we're essentially cut by 2/3 the amount of students we can have on a bus. So in a 65-passenger bus, we have about 21, 22 students on that bus. And again, I have to thank our community for driving their children, our students, to classes in order for us to be open as much as we are right now. Other implications that we're trying to sort through, the vast majority of our K through 5 in-person classrooms are at capacity. And so when we started this process and we asked for parents to choose a model, it worked out so that we could socially distance and be really creative with our space and be creative with our staffing and allow approximately, again, this is on average, around 12 students in a classroom. Any more than that right now could possibly break that model. And so if we had an influx of people, or even actually 10 or 15 people wanting to go to K-5 in person, we would not have that capacity as it is right now. So in other words, unless students choose remote, we wouldn't have capacity to allow new students in. And conversely, if we had more people choose remote, we might have to break sections, and there's implications for that, in that the current students in remote would probably have new teachers and new classes in order to create schedules for everyone. And similarly, at the secondary level, our hybrid classes, both remote and in person, are at capacity on both sides. So it's very fascinating. During this process, we hired to the tune of about $1.5 million of staffing to accommodate everyone's needs. And basically, we have everything filled perfectly at this point. And so anything tipping the scale would cause a domino effect. So we are a little bit concerned about that. Other things that we have to give consideration to is that a change in learning model would create less opportunities for students continuing their current schedule. For example, if I was a remote learner right now and I wanted to join hybrid, my options may be limited. For example, if I wanted to enroll in a full year course that's been running in person, but I haven't been taking that for the first half of the year, I can't jump into that course midway through. And then the last thing we're trying to figure out and struggling with is just the staffing part. We are struggling finding highly qualified teachers in certain areas, and switching models certainly would be a challenge if we needed to find additional staffing. So at our next board meeting, I'm hopeful that we will be able to provide more clarity in a process relative to helping families that are interested in switching models. And so I ask for your just a little bit more patience until our next board meeting so I can actually present our plan for moving forward. So there's a lot going on. I guess I would just end by saying thank you. Thank you for how many positive emails that I've been receiving from families after updates, and need to thank our teachers and our staff. We have a lot of red eyes. People look really tired right now, and it's not just because of any kind of COVID fatigue, but I think that our folks are working harder than ever and have been doing it for quite a while right now. So hats off to our staff. They're really working hard on your behalf and on your kids' behalf, and they have amazing hearts, and they're doing whatever they need to do to make this as positive as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Shifting to the consent agenda, may I have a motion, please? Irene? Robin, second? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Old business? New business? Okay. Anthony, do we have people waiting in the waiting room?
We have 5 people waiting.
Okay.
This one is nothing to do.
Okay. I would just ask that everyone in the waiting room, if you could please take a moment just to get yourself situated once you're accepted in, and if you could state your name and address clearly before addressing the board, we'd appreciate it, and we are going to limit the time to roughly 3 minutes. Naveen, can you hear us? You just have to unmute. And Anthony, maybe you need to unmute as well.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm just here, came here tonight to talk about the, sorry about that. Let's talk. I just came here to talk about the closure of the school. To talk about the closure of the schools and really to urge the board as a parent to please open the schools as soon as possible. And I understand, I was listening to Superintendent Pero talk about all the limitations that are being posed. And I guess from my perspective as a parent and somebody who's kind of outside the bureaucratic process, and I thank you all for engaging in that. I think that, you know, from my perspective, I really feel like we need to question some of the fundamental principles that are directing us here. And that really means questioning our political leaders. I'm a parent of 3 kids in the district, 2 of whom are currently doing hybrid model. And my husband is a physician. I'm a PhD in English. I was a professor for 15 years. And I want the board to understand the kind of suffering that the children are going through, the kind of stress that they are going through. I have normally happy-go-lucky kids who didn't have any issues. And my husband and I have both observed in our 2 boys who are doing the hybrid a marked decline in physical health, in mental health, and educational competency from last year when they were full-time school. Our 8th grader is a straight-A student, and he formerly worked very well in school. He now struggles to complete his work and suffers stress and anxiety because of this struggle. He also experiences muscle loss from a sedentary life. He used to walk all the time through Barker Road. He doesn't anymore. Our 6th grader is a new middle schooler, and he's unable to learn important lessons in organization and workflow because he only has direct contact with his teachers 2 days a week. Both boys used to be happy-go-lucky, healthy kids. Now my husband and I see in them symptoms of depression, anxiety, and poor health. And we directly link that to the fact that they are not in school full-time. I see that suffering in my children, and I ask why the schools continue to be closed. And as I said, I'm an outsider, and I look at Europe, and I see that in Europe, we have case rises in Europe that exceed those of Monroe County, okay? And yet, in Europe, the schools remain open. Okay, so we have to question, and I really would urge the board to question the fundamental principles by which we are asked to make these accommodations. We need to step back and be more macro with this. And as a parent, I want to know from the board, what more can I do to help with this? In Ireland, okay,
Naveen,
we saw 25 new cases per 100,000 people.
Naveen,
that's far in excess of what we are in Monroe County.
Naveen?
Yes?
If you could just wrap it up in the next 10 to 20 seconds, please.
Okay, but in Ireland, the schools remain open. In Europe, we need to appreciate that Europe is also seeing a rise in cases, okay? But they're keeping the schools open because it is a priority for them. And we also have to, I think about what is actually going on with COVID in terms of fatalities, okay? So if you go on the Monroe County dashboard, since September 1, for 2.5 months, okay, where we have seen cases steadily rising, we have seen 13 fatalities, 13 from COVID in a county that normally sees 7,000 deaths every year from other causes, right? So then where is the crisis? That is my question as a parent. And I say this really as a progressive, as a feminist, as an anti-racist. I don't say this as a person who supported Donald Trump. I say this as a progressive. Where's the crisis? Because to me, shutting down the schools is something we only do in the most grave of crises. And I don't see that happening here. I feel like we all, as citizens, need to step back and ask really what is going on.
Thank you, Naveen.
Where is the crisis that forces the shutting of the schools?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mike, did you want to say anything?
I think I can just and thank you for that. I echo your concern. I've shared this before, I think, with probably three of the people that are on the board. We have 4 people left on public comment. 3 of them I've met with several times. And I've shared the same thing. My son, my kids are going through the same thing. They are not themselves all the time, and we all do want the same end result. We want our kids back in school. I would urge you and everyone in the waiting room that may speak to the same topic that this is also your time to advocate to the Department of Health, to the Governor's office. Yellow zones are not something we create. None of us are medical doctors. I don't think. We take our advice from those that are in the positions to do their best to give us guidance, and then it's our duty to follow that guidance. So I would urge anyone that is not satisfied with where we are right now to please advocate for what you believe to the appropriate person, if it's the governor or Department of Health.
I would just have to piggyback off of what Superintendent Pirro said and just remind everyone that's in the waiting room or anyone who has the same concern that everyone at this table, every board member takes an oath of office, and we have to abide by state guidelines. That means the governor, state ed department, and the Department of Health. So I just need to reiterate that and just let everyone know that doesn't mean that we don't advocate on behalf of our constituents. The next person, Anthony?
Okay, the next person we have is Baker Reed, right?
Okay. Clayton? He's muted. There we go. There we go.
Hello?
Hi, Clayton. How are you?
Clayton?
Yes, hello? I don't know how to unmute.
He's muted.
You're good.
Over here. We can hear you.
We can hear you.
There we go.
Hello? Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Clayton. How are you?
Yes, hello? I don't know how to unmute.
Is he on the wrong link?
Hello, can you hear me now?
You're good.
Thank you.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Thank you. I'm going to speak for just a couple of minutes.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Clayton. How are you?
Hello? Jill, I need your help.
Clayton, this is, again, this happened again. When you go into public comment, you have to close out of the other link or it won't work.
We can hear you.
Thank you. I'm going to speak for just a couple of minutes.
We're going to come back to you.
Hello?
Let's go to Vicky.
I need your help.
Clayton, this is, again, this...
Okay, this is going to be Vicky Viteri.
Yeah.
Okay. Vicki?
Work fine with her first.
I don't, oh, there she is, right there. Vicki, can you hear us?
Why don't you try to go back to Dr. Baker?
Okay. Clayton, if you could unmute. There you go.
Hello?
Perfect. Do you hear us?
Hello?
The central office team members that are there are texting us that they've lost sound.
Oh, they've
Hello,
lost
can you hear me
sound.
now?
Okay.
Okay, try it now.
Clayton, can you hear us? Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I will start talking. It'll just take a couple of minutes. Thank you for your patience. I do hear you, yes.
Go ahead.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I will start talking. I'm sorry about all the problem. Last Thursday, November 5th, 4 physicians, including myself, met with Superintendent Pirro, Board of Education President Amy Thomas, and Board Vice President Ted Oresti. I want to start out by thanking them for their time and attention. We discussed with them the growing mental health crisis our children are facing due to continued school closures in our district. We offered to help in any way possible to get schools fully open. We stated that we recognize COVID-19 is a significant public health issue. We do not deny the reality or significance of COVID-19. We also stated that keeping children out of school, including in a hybrid model, is unnecessary in the fight against COVID-19 and is harmful to our children. We informed Mr. Pirro, Ms. Thomas, and Mr. Oresti of the growing mental health crisis among our children. Depression, anxiety disorders, and suicidality are all on the rise. This is not due to so-called COVID fatigue. Rather, it is the direct result of our children being unnecessarily denied their normal lives and education due to prolonged school closures, online learning, and the social isolation and alienation caused by our schools failing to provide our children a normal learning environment. We stressed these facts to Mr. Pirro, Ms. Thomas, and Mr. Oresti, who assured us they heard us. We next presented detailed and valid scientific data showing the overwhelming evidence that children are not at significant risk due to COVID-19. For example, we showed that the risk of a school-aged child dying of COVID-19, if they catch it, is less than half as likely as the risk that they will be struck by lightning. Simply put, when policymakers such as Cuomo, Bello, and Mendoza state that they have schools closed to protect students, they are not telling the truth. We informed Mr. Pirro, Ms. Thomas, and Mr. Oresti of the complete absence of evidence that teaching in school poses substantial risk to teachers and staff, and that extensive data gathered worldwide shows that schools are not drivers of community spread of COVID-19. In short, while COVID-19 is certainly real and is a cause of great fear, there is no valid scientific reason for our children not to be in school full time. Statements from numerous leading health organizations, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the World Health Organization, the Centers for Disease Control, and UNICEF, all strongly support in-school learning during the pandemic. Monroe County and New York State policies toward schools during COVID-19 are excessive, much more stringent than nearly every other state in the country, and do not reflect any national or worldwide standard. They are not evidence-based. They fail to take into account the harms they cause children. Current state and local policies show a woeful lack of understanding of risk and a gross disregard for the collateral damage caused by their unnecessarily harsh mandates, particularly to children. It is important to note that in many instances, Monroe County rules imposed by Bello and Mendoza are even stricter than New York State as a whole, for no explicable reason. At present, all our students, grade 6 and above, remain stuck in a substandard learning environment that is profoundly damaging to their mental and emotional health. We have warned Mr. Pirro, Ms. Thomas, and Mr. Aresti of our grave concerns that if schools are not fully opened and soon, the risk of suicide and drug overdose amongst our students will continue to rise. If and when, God forbid, tragedy strikes in this manner, no one can say they have not been warned. Since that
Clayton,
meeting,
if you could please wrap up.
County authorities have decided to threaten our schools with further lockdown measures, despite the fact that there have been 0 COVID-19 deaths since October 29th in the county, and there has been no spread within the schools, as noted by Superintendent Pirro. This is further evidence of their intention to concentrate solely on COVID-19 at the expense of the well-being of our children.
Clayton, if you could please wrap
up. I ask the board as a
up.
whole to address this matter immediately and to hold strong against the excessive strictures imposed by Mendoza, Bello, and Cuomo, to keep our schools open in the short term and to get our schools fully open as soon as possible. There are many members of our community who stand ready to support you in this endeavor. I urge the district to produce a plan for a full reopening of schools. I recommend that the district submit at least a preliminary plan prior to Thanksgiving break. We cannot overemphasize the importance and urgency of this matter. The well-being and potentially the lives of children are at stake. You must get our schools fully open. Thank you for listening. Clayton Baker, MD. Thank you.
Thank you, Clayton. Yes, that would be fine. Vicki?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Good evening. My name is Vicki Vetter of 24 McCord Woods here in the Pittsford School District. I think some of you know me. I've been in the district for a very long time. Extremely passionate about the education of our kids in school. I'm a veteran scout leader and work with numerous kids in our district at a scouting level. I would like to piggyback what Nicole and Clayton has conveyed to you all tonight. We are facing a mental health crisis among our children. This past weekend, I've attended the second funeral of a person committing suicide. These children have been kept away from our schools for far too long. And now we're getting signals that the schools may be shut down again after Thanksgiving. There are symptoms of depression, anxiety, and as Clayton mentioned, and I just did, suicidal thoughts among our children due to lockdown and to this hybrid schedule and no normalcy in their lives. In addition, there's in our community, there is COVID hysteria, unwarranted. We cannot live in fear. Viruses are everywhere. And the risk is minuscule, not in, granted there are risks for certain segments of the population, but we're talking about children here. We have to remember COVID tests do not equal active cases, hospitalizations, or death. We need to keep it in perspective. I would encourage members of the community, the educators, the mental health experts, our religious leaders, to collaborate and try to allay some of this COVID fear so that people can start putting their lives back together. The other point I would like to make is this remote learning. Technological delivery of education is really not education. It's confusing, it's ineffective, and it's unhealthy. This reimagined education is not ideal. It's, in Pittsburgh, we've always had a high quality school district. You always like to point out in our grades how successful our kids are, and et cetera, et cetera. But in reality, it was great when it was pre-Common Core, and that's what we need to get back to. That's another point. Dr. Baker mentioned, we should be supporting and advocating to follow the guidelines by the American Academy of Pediatrics, the WHO, the CDC, et cetera. That was a good point about Europe's model. We should be advocating for that. What we're succumbing to is the political pressure and all of their mandates, all their guidelines, which are extremely unreasonable. Now we've got this testing, this 20% testing. Just, it's another effort to raise the stats, shut us down, shut us down, shut us down, which is just going to be tragic for too many people.
Vicki, if you could wrap up your comments, please.
I'll wrap it up. I understand, 3 minutes. So what I heard in summary, I was going to ask, what are your plans for reopening to 5 days? But what I heard tonight is that I'm disappointed. You're not going to advocate for our kids because you thought you made an oath. You're bound by your professional, your boundaries. But, if we lose a kid, how are we going to feel then? When we're a child, schools need to be open. You need to be doing everything in your power to make that happen. And we'll do what we can to support that. We're in this together. We all want our kids to be in school. Let's make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.
Let me just make a comment.
Yeah.
And just a quick comment we've heard from a few people mentioning suicide and depression. Mm-hmm. I would please ask for any parents that are out there, if you feel that your child is suicidal or depressed, to please contact their building principal so that we can provide the best mental health support that we can. I understand we're in a world pandemic. I understand that it's a hardship and beyond a hardship for so many of us. I've shared it many times. We understand that. We are also very proud for having our students in school, K-5, 4.5 days a week, something that is not very typical across the state. I'm really proud of what we're doing so far. While you're talking about reopening, we're talking about trying to stay open. Right. So I think we need to make that distinction right now. And it's not a matter of what do we want to do, or send us a reopening plan by November, Thanksgiving, whatever that was. I guess what I would ask you to understand is that there are laws. This isn't let's advocate against and dig our heels in the ground and not do it. This means that if we don't follow the law, we shut down. And so right now, what we need to do is to make sure we're doing everything we can as a community to reduce the spread so we can stay open. When we stay open and our numbers go down, it allows for more options. So I just ask for your patience. Please reach out if you know someone that's struggling and needs support so we can address that, please.
Thanks, Mike. Yep. Laura Jean's on mute. Laura Jean?
Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you so much for letting me on here. I have 2 points to make. Oh, first of all, I'm Laura Jean Dykeman. I'm at 19 Rippingdale Road. So I have 2 points to make. So today's news regarding that yellow zoning is really concerning to me, as it is you, and I can only imagine how incredibly difficult all these mandates have been on you as our board, as on our superintendent, and I really commend you on all the work that you have done thus far. I can only imagine how incredibly difficult it is. After listening to Cuomo and then Mendoza and then Bello, I have some serious concerns. Out of the roughly 300 positive tests in the county yesterday, 6 of them were elementary students. COVID is not spreading significantly in our schools, yet schools are the primary recipients of the regulations and the punishments that once we hit yellow, orange, and red. As Mendoza said, testing 20% of our students per week in the county is about 15,000 tested children in Rochester per week. Why don't they test the people working in the offices, walking in the bars, restaurants, grocery stores, places of business? Why don't they infringe upon the medical privacy of adults? Because we won't stand for it. The adults won't stand for it, yet our children are being forced in order to receive the education they're entitled to. We are talking about medical testing on children without parental consent in the name of public safety. To be clear, I am not anti-COVID testing. I just believe deeply that it should be medically warranted with parental consent and not psychologically harmful to young children. Cuomo has created a lockdown guarantee by mandating testing 20% populations in public schools, 100% in colleges, and for incoming travelers. This massive increase in testing over a short period of time will necessarily result in cases increased, even though very few are sick and death rates and hospitalization rates remain low. This will result in a full lockdown for Thanksgiving and Christmas and probably through winter 2021. My second point is, on June 24th, Governor Cuomo reopened our region to phase 4. This phase allowed schools to reopen had we been in school at that point. We had 48 deaths that month. In the last 2.5 months, we have had only 15 deaths related to COVID and none in the last 12 days. So where do these numbers justify this yellow phase lockdown? Additionally, New York State currently has the 3rd lowest COVID infection rate of any state. We know that COVID is dangerous to elderly, but most CDC statistics show that the infection rate for COVID for kids is actually below that of the seasonal flu. We need to continue to protect our elderly and immunocompromised from this virus, but at what cost to our children? Schools need to find a way to go against or change what Bello, Mendoza, and Cuomo are saying and get kids back in school more days with more normalcy, including sports and extracurriculars. Club sports were played all summer long, unmasked, with very little cases of infection. And high school football was played this fall in more than half of the United States.
Laura Jean, if you could wrap it up.
The mental health issues are incredibly concerning. During the lockdown, there's been a 40.9% increase in reported mental or behavioral health issues, 30.9% increase in anxiety and depression, 20.63% increase in trauma and stress, and 13.3% increase in increased substance abuse, and a 10.7% increase in people considering suicide in the last 30 days.
Thank you, Laura Jean.
Here. As we see from these statistics, the effect of the guidelines we are following are causing harm and will cause mental distress rates to skyrocket higher than we're even seeing now. Social distancing is teaching them to rely on virtual friends, teachers, and role models. Antibacterial hand sanitizer is for bacteria, not viruses. The constant use of it is actually telling our bodies not to do what it's designed to do. 8 hours of mask wearing is forcing our children to breathe in what the body purposely excreted, essentially causing harm to us. The hysteria of becoming ill or coming in contact with germs is out of this world, not to mention the list of symptoms which every person in Rochester will soon have as soon as the cold air comes in.
Thank you, Laura Jean.
These are causing serious anxiety to our children, and I urge parents to become vocal and vigilant by contacting Mike Mendoza, Adam Bello, and Governor Cuomo. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mike, do you want to add to that?
I do. I do want to share my sentiments something that I do agree with that Laura Jean shared. With the testing of our students, sometimes I feel like we're fishing in the wrong pond. Our schools have done everything. We've been the safe place. So I believe you have a valid point about why we're testing our students. I will disagree, though, with the more testing, the higher our cases are going to be in schools, because the more testing that we do, I believe it's going to show more negatives in our school, which is going to lower our rate down, which will allow us to open up. I don't like the fact that restaurants in schools, for example, are the ones that are getting hit, when it's not restaurants and schools that are causing the spread. The groups that are causing the spread are the people that are allowing large gatherings to happen in private and then spreading it and spreading it and spreading it. And I also don't like that, and I appreciate your comments at the beginning, that here we are again, schools are placed in the middle of a controversy that is supposed to be medical in nature. And so and I think I need to clarify something too. The yellow zone status is Governor Cuomo's call. This is not Adam Bello. This is not Dr. Mendoza. This is Governor Cuomo. This is, and I promise you this, when I speak with Dr. Mendoza and Adam Bello, they want schools to be open. This is not their call. Thank you.
Next up is Virginia.
Okay. Virginia? She's muted.
Yes, sorry, there's a delay between the YouTube and getting into the, I was just listening to Mr. Piro's last remarks. I'm sorry, so I'm a little bit delayed on what he just said. I'm not prepared like everyone else with a fancy, like a well-written speech, or because they're all valid points.
Virginia, can I just ask you for your address?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can we just have your address, please?
Oh, yes, 7 Gladbrook Road, sorry.
Thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I apologize. I am just this passionate mom. You guys all know me. I mean, most of you know me. That's exactly what the person right before us talked about, and what Mr. Piro said. We're fishing in the wrong pond, and now my kids our schools have done such a phenomenal job with this. Now I'm very emotional, obviously, today after everything from Mr. Cuomo. And the testing, and again, I was waiting to talk, and everything was said prior to me getting on. So I don't have much to add to that other than hoping. I'm not expecting you to have answers to my questions on whether I will know if my kid is going to be tested, whether there'll be parents. I don't expect you to have all these questions, because I know you guys good enough to know that you will answer my questions, hopefully in the next few days, so that I can make a choice to keep my children in the schools or not, because this is getting too much, and I don't know if I personally can handle it, and my children can't either. This is getting way out of, and I believe there is danger in COVID, and I'm okay with my kids wearing masks. They've done phenomenally well with it, and they love going to school, and I wish they could all go to school every day, but I'm realistic about it all. But this testing is just crazy to me. But anyway, thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Virginia.
I'm sorry, just want to add to that.
Go ahead.
Virginia, I will share this, is that we will be as transparent as possible relative to testing. There are a lot of questions that are unanswered that we've submitted. I've asked live twice today, and there's no official answer yet, but for any families, we want to give as many options as possible. And even as everything from, if a parent tests themselves, does the child have to test, is a possibility, to a parent testing the child, to everything else in between. So we're trying to be as creative as possible with this, and And it seems like those that are on the other end are being open to that as of now. So certainly more to come. I would ask for you to put this in the back of your mind for now. Go on and have a great day tomorrow, and let's take this one day at a time, and as information comes in, we will certainly share 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm Pittsburgh, one of Pittsburgh's biggest cheerleaders. I believe that you guys will do the right thing, but my kids always come first, like everybody's kids, and I'm so scared for everything going on, and I'll hound you if I don't get the questions to my answer, the answers to my question, but I know you will answer them. So thank you, and I appreciate your time. Have a good evening, and thank you everybody for everything you do for our children. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Virginia.
Virginia, we're all changing our cell phone numbers and our addresses.
Oh, I know how to get you. You're the fastest email responder out there.
Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Hi, Thadaha.
Hi.
Hi there.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, sounds good. I'm Thadaha Tavakumar. Address is 3 Warder Drive. Sorry, I just moved, so I had to remember the address. I don't have anything set up like Virginia said. I decided I would come on and talk because I'm a mental health therapist in a school system. So I'm actually in a school for kindergarten through 12. So I do feel like there's a huge importance with the school being in session. I have kids who are hybrid, remote, or in school, which are elementary. So it is a huge importance for kids to be in school in some form. However, I believe, and the kids that I see, the COVID anxiety is huge and the COVID fear is real. The children aren't really afraid of themselves getting sick, but they're more afraid of getting someone else that they love, their loved ones or the people that they live with, like their grandparents, sick. So that's a huge fear for a lot of the kids. The COVID anxiety is huge. So I feel testing is essential for the kids to help maintain and curb COVID in the asymptomatic, population. Kids don't really get it. However, they can be asymptomatic and transfer it, and that's where the fear comes in for a lot of kids that I work with, at least. And I think, we're all talking about, not closing down schools, so I think this is huge to make sure that we maintain and keep schools open, is to do the testing and to curb the COVID spread. So that's kind of what I wanted to share from my perspective as being a mental health therapist situated in a school district.
Thank you, Thadaha. Okay. Hi there. If you could just unmute. And your name, please?
Hi, are you, who is called on?
You are.
Me?
You
Van
are.
Buren?
Yes. If you could give us your name and your address, please.
Sure, it's Roger Van Buren. I'm at 40 Turning Leaf Drive, and I've got 4 kids in the district. My wife sometimes does some subbing for clerical work. I will be probably about half as long and a third as eloquent as the previous speakers. But I also wanted to add my 2 cents to the general sentiment that I would like the kids back in school. And I'm not sure if this was addressed in some of the previous speakers' comments, but and maybe you've addressed this at other meetings as well, because I have not attended other meetings in the past. But I'm just wondering what kind of contingency planning is being done around reopening. So even if we are moving into a yellow phase right now, is there some kind of financial plan, personnel plan, space planning being done around how we could reopen if we needed to? And I think that Superintendent Pirro mentioned earlier that we have a great community that can rally around causes, and if all the things that people said about the benefits of going to school, were as widespread as I think they are based on at least my social circle, then I think that the community could help rally around getting those resources. But I think that the people, the professionals in this room are the ones who would have to develop that kind of plan and socialize that kind of plan, and then the community can rally together to get those resources. So I don't want to be a victim of Bello or Mendoza or Cuomo. I want us to try and control our own destiny as much as possible, and that would all start with us developing our own plan that, again, the community can rally around. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Okay. Hello. Oops. There we go. If you could unmute.
Thank you. Sorry. I apologize. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, great. My name is James Duell. I live at 53 Turning Leaf Drive in Pittsburgh. I've been listening to the commentary, and I agree that we desperately need to reopen the schools for our children's sake. They're bearing an unfair burden with this whole pandemic, and it's having many detrimental effects on them. What I want to do is I want to call on Mr. Pirro, the Board of Education, the superintendents across the county. I want them to join with us, the families, to take a public stand against these policies that Cuomo and Mendoza are propagating so that we can move towards reopening. Family advocating is not going to be enough. We need the educators to publicly advocate for the needs of our students. I know you're all dedicated educators. You don't want to hurt your students. That's what's happening now. So please join with us. Be outspoken for the sake of our kids. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Anyone else? Okay. With that, we'll close public comment session. And may I have a motion to adjourn, please? Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Renee. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks so much for everyone joining in.